There's a new KTM Supersport out on the block. Can you guys believe it? It's been like 15 years since we've had a proper KTM Superbike or Supersport because KTM said it's too dangerous to have superbikes out in the world, and yet they were making the KTM Super Duke with like no traction control and nothing and like all that torque. That's a bit strange. But today we're talking about the new KTM 990 RCR, and I'm really excited about this bike. You guys might remember that I got the chance to ride a KTM RC8C on track, which I still cannot even believe I had that opportunity. But bar none, that was the greatest track day bike I have ever ridden in my life. It was pure race bike, pure amazing. I didn't even get it dialed in and I was already after 5 laps doing personal bests. It was just amazing. This new bike, the 990 RCR, is not exactly the RC8C, right? Like, this is much more of a road version, homologated version, that kind of motorcycle. So in today's video, I'm gonna give you guys a deep dive on this bike, give you some of my opinions on it and what I think this means for the market. So the first thing I want to talk about this bike is how it looks. Obviously, it looks very MotoGP inspired. You can see with the little catfish arrow elements, the kind of stumpy tail almost looks like the same tail they use on the RC16 MotoGP bike. I really like the blacked out Brembos. That's a nice touch. This motorcycle in general looks extremely racy. The geometry looks proper, but I will say, if you look at the seat relative to the bar and relative to the foot pegs, it's an aggressive rider triangle, but it looks kind of like the Yamaha R7. It kind of looks like that, not exactly like a GSX-8R, like not so super sport bike, because this is definitely way more aggressive, but I wouldn't classify this as like a ridiculously aggressive like Panigale V4R or a Yamaha R6 even. This motorcycle is heavily based on the Duke 990 road bike, as many of you guys know, but it does feature many changes to make it a little bit more aggressive and track ready. Most noticeably, you have clip-ons instead of handlebars. The rake and trail is a little bit different on this bike, making it a little bit steeper than the Duke 990, and they've beefed up the suspension and the frame to just make it a little bit more rigid and to handle better on track. Now, as I said, KTM hasn't made a homologated superbike or super sports bike in a long time, and this motorcycle, they're actually trying to go out and race with it. The whole thing with KTM is that they are ready to race, of course. But one thing I find interesting is that this motorcycle is going to feature a 947cc big parallel twin from the Duke 990. That doesn't really fit into any racing category currently. Even the next generation Supersport category, you have something like the Panigale V2 that's been detuned to work with the Triumph Daytona 765, the MV Agustas, the R6s. That category right now is very broad and very weird. This thing would need to be punching a lot of horsepower to compete with that category. And I don't really know if it's going to fit in there, but I could see KTM lobbying the FIM and trying to make it so that this motorcycle fits so that they can race it. KTM has said that this motorcycle will make wildcard appearances in the European Supersport category as non-point scoring, probably just so they can say that the bike is on track and racing, but I don't know. That's a bit weird in my opinion. Now, I did want to point out just how different this motorcycle is from the KTM RC8C. Now, this is the RC8C right here. And if you don't know, this is a super limited edition, non-homologated, track-only bike that KTM made a few years ago. They made 100 of them and they sold out in like 4.5 minutes. And then they made 200 more of them and they sold out in like 2 minutes. So clearly there is pent-up demand for a KTM Supersport. And I will add this one little caveat here. This motorcycle I think was like $35,000 or $40,000. It was super expensive. And one of the coolest thing about it was the very first run, whoever bought it got the chance to go to Jerez and hang out with Danny Pedrosa and spin some laps on their new bike that they were gonna take delivery of. And I just think that's really, really cool. So again, the RC8C is a true like race bike. The fuel tank is underneath right here. This is not the fuel tank on the motorcycle, it's actually right over here. You can see the frame is totally different from the 990 RCR. The swing arm is completely different as well. It's got this kind of different proper Supersport styled swing arm. It has an arrow element down here. The whole thing is super different, probably way lighter weight as well. If you look at the frame on the 990 RCR, You see that more normal naked bike frame. This is the gas tank, which has changed quite a bit over the Dukes. This has a way longer gas tank right here, probably for rider ergonomics and feel. You can also see the swing arm looks basically the same as the Duke 990 as well. This tail section, while very stumpy, obviously is just a subframe that is aluminum as far as I know. The RC8C, like I said, way lighter weight, way more aero oriented. You have way more adjustability on this platform as well. You can change things like the offset. Everything is highly customizable because it really was designed to be a superlative track day toy as opposed to the homologated 990 RCR that's going to be much more of a road-going motorcycle. KTM was quoted saying they don't want to charge an exorbitant price for the 990 RCR. I'm gonna ballpark it at like $15,500 to $16,000. It's a premium KTM Supersport product. I don't think it's gonna be that cheap. The 990 Duke is a little up in price. I think it's close to $13,000. So for fairings, a couple changes, maybe some higher spec suspension, although this is using, I believe, the same open cartridge fork as the 990 Duke. I would estimate this would be about $15,000 to $16,000. And then you can drag it through the KTM Power Parts catalog and easily get this thing up to above 20 grand if you wanted to.
When it comes to motorcycles, we love talking about modifications you can make to your bike to improve the performance. But did you know there's a super simple way to improve your experience on the internet? That's when the sponsor of today's video, Surfshark, comes in. As motorcyclists, we're always on the go, but it's important to stay connected. And when you're traveling around, riding your ADV bike to your favorite coffee shop, using public Wi-Fi can put you at risk for online threats. As someone who makes online content for a living, I take my digital security very seriously. Using Surfshark encrypts your data, ensuring your private information remains private. We're always talking about staying safe on our bikes, but it's just as important to stay protected online as well. Using the Surfshark VPN has other benefits too, like allowing you to change your IP address location to gain access to region-specific libraries on streaming services. You know I love my fine European motorcycles, my Ducatis and my Triumphs, and I enjoy some fine European cinema as well. Surfshark allows me to access all sorts of cool movies and shows that aren't available to American audiences. If you want to stay secure online and enjoy the benefits of Surfshark, hit the link in the description box and use the code YAMMY to get 4 extra months. Surfshark has a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you've got nothing to lose by trying it out and seeing how it can improve your experience online. Again, click that link in the description box and use the code YAMMY for an extra 4 months. Thanks so much to Surfshark for the support on today's video.
The one thing I want to point out about this bike that I think is interesting, why KTM is launching this so early, because we're here in, early 2024, mid 2024, and they're launching this bike as a future 2025 model run. That's when they're actually going to start producing them to sell. I think KTM wants to build hype and get this in people's brains before Yamaha launches the R9. I really think this next generation Supersport category is about to get a huge shot in the arm with both this bike and the Yamaha R9. Now, we don't know anything about the Yamaha R9, but I can almost guarantee you it's going to be something similar to this RC990 RCR thing that KTM is doing. Naked bike frame, slightly updated geometry and ergonomics, going from handlebars to clip-on, stumpy tail, slightly updated rake and angle, probably a better master cylinder, although the MT-09 does come with the full radial pull as well. But the R9 is really the bike that everybody is waiting for. I get so many comments for R9 people. I think they're about as vocal as Toprak Razgatlioglu fans, where they just go to bat for the R9 even if no one's talking about it. If it's not even part of the conversation, they'll just say, hey, R9, look, R9. And I really think that Yamaha will definitely homologate the R9 for use in World Supersport. But again, that category is so bizarre right now with the Panigale V2, the MV Agusta, the Triumph, the R6, the ZX6. It's a really varied and strange category. It's kind of just like, hey, bring whatever Supersport bike you want and we'll limit it to like 130 horsepower and see what happens. But I don't know how competitive either one of those bikes will be because, we've seen that the Ducati V2 is very competitive in that category just because of the torque it has off the apex, even if you reduce down the overall power output. But let's talk through specs, because everybody loves specs on these things. So the Duke 990 has a 947cc parallel twin with KTM's unique firing order that Fortnite made so famous as being perfect or whatever. It has 123 horsepower and 76 foot-pounds of torque. Now, in the new 990 RCR, they're claiming new pistons, new rods, new crankshaft, and a couple other things to make it a little bit more zesty, but I wouldn't expect, 150 horsepower or anything like that. I would almost wager to say that this bike's gonna make between 128 to 134 horsepower. Y'all can quote me on that. Now, in the RC8C, that features an 889cc parallel twin from the 890 Duke. It was produced in partnership with Kramer. That's the kind of works division of KTM that makes the little one-off race bikes. If you guys remember the Kramer GP1, I believe it's called, or the GP2. The GP2, I think, is the one that looks like the RC8C. I can't quite remember off the top of my head, but it's the single-cylinder, ultra-lightweight race bike, so Kramer works in conjunction with them. That motor in the RC8C made 135 horsepower. Now, it had titanium connecting rods, a way higher compression ratio at 14:1, so it was properly zesty, and when I track tested it, I was really surprised with how well it pulled. But a big factor with how well it accelerated was how lightweight the RC8C was. And there's just no way that the 990 RCR is gonna be anywhere close to that lightweight. The 990 RCR is definitely gonna have the 5-inch TFT that KTM's using across their KTM products and the Husky products, and it's definitely gonna come with all the same electronic rider controls and rider aids that the 990 Duke comes with. Now, one thing that's gonna be interesting is, are they gonna do the same demo mode thing and the track mode things and all that stuff? I'm not sure. But one thing to note is the 990 RCR is also going to come in a more track-only oriented version that's going to feature some spicy upgrades too. So you can get a road version or a track version, but the track version is nowhere near the RC8C, remember that. But it is interesting to think about if the R version is going to get the fully adjustable WP suspension front and rear, or is that going to be an up-spec version for the track-only model? So it looks like a pretty sweet motorcycle, and if it does come out and I can get my hands on one, I'd love to do it as a giveaway because everybody loves a Supersport bike, and it seems like everyone's loving KTM these days. But let me know what you guys think about this new 990 RCR from KTM. Are you excited to see KTM finally getting back in the Supersport category? Or do you think this is a lot of marketing hype and buzz from the company that's also producing a corollary docu-series along with this machine? Now I get it, everybody's got to get into the media and marketing game nowadays, but it kind of feels like KTM is really patting themselves on the back for coming back into the Supersport game, while most other manufacturers have been there and done that. And again, I think KTM's claim to fame that they got out of the Supersport game because it was getting too dangerous is a bit silly when they were also selling the Super Duke at the same time and kept selling the Super Duke when there was no TC, rider aids, or anything else on that machine. So, I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Let me know all your thoughts about the 990 RCR, and I'll catch you on the next one. See you later. Keep watching Yummy Noob.